Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the second in a series of candidate forums the Chamber is hosting with our partner SDG&E. My name is Dylan Fisher, and I am the Economic Development and Advocacy Manager of the North San Diego Business Chamber. We're hosting these forums here tonight to help you get to better know the candidates that you'll see on the November ballot. And now, as a nonpartisan chamber, we cannot endorse any of the candidates you'll see here this evening. This is solely an opportunity to get to better know the candidate and the policy priorities they have. A couple other quick notes. This meeting will be recorded and will be posted on the Chamber's YouTube channel to be viewed at a later time. Please feel free to share the link with anyone who may be interested. And secondly, we will have an opportunity for audience Q&A. So if you have any questions for Joe, please put them in the chat box or in the Q&A section, and I will be sure to pass them along to our moderator, Joe Britton. And with that, I am pleased to introduce our moderator, Joe Britton, and I want to take the time to thank SDG&E for their support of the event, because without their help, this would not be possible. Joe Britton is the Public Affairs Manager with SDG&E, and currently in his role, his responsibilities include coordinating company relations with city councils and other elected and appointed county officials in Inland North County and East County. In his role, he works to develop and promote civic and community relations through the coordination with chambers of commerce, economic development groups, and community groups as well. He provides communications to key stakeholders on energy issues affecting customers and in the region. And with that, Joe, I will pass it over to you.
Thanks a lot, Dylan, and thanks everyone for joining this evening for the second candidate forum featuring City Council District 5 candidate Joe Leventhal. Joe is a lawyer, a business owner, and UC San Diego alumnus running for District 5. A resident of San Diego for almost 20 years, Joe has a history of leadership in the city through his service as an ethics commissioner, protecting San Diego citizens and taxpayers from government ethics violations. Joe's priorities include reducing homelessness, public safety, and road repair. Joe believes that bold, collaborative leadership, as he's demonstrated throughout his life, is the best way to approach San Diego's persistent challenges. He looks forward to the opportunity to improve quality of life for San Diego citizens as a member of the City Council. We did invite his opponent, Marty Van Wilpert, to attend tonight, but she was unavailable. With that, Joe, thank you for joining us this evening, and we'd love for you to take a few minutes to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your candidacy.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you to the Chamber for having this event. I really think it's important for voters to have an opportunity to hear directly from candidates and have some questions answered and learn about us. You gave a very good summary of my background. I'm actually a father of three. My kids are 12, 11, and 9. My oldest, her birthday's in a few days, so almost 13, 11, and 9. But that's a big reason why I decided to run for office. I've got a great career and I actually love my family, wish I could spend more time with them. But I have some real concerns about the way the city's going and how we're trying to address some of our problems. I think we're kicking a lot of cans down the road, not really truly solving and addressing some problems we have in our region and our city. And I care a lot about what this city looks like in the next 20 and 30 years for my kids. So I decided to go down this road. I've got a great history of service in the community and really being a leader, bringing people together from different backgrounds and moving the ball forward and making sure everybody's a part of that process, making sure everybody's voice is heard. And like I said, really seeing results. And I want to take that community service and take it to another level on the City Council. As you mentioned, I've got a number of priorities. Obviously with COVID, there are some things that we weren't anticipating in the primary. I think our economic development is critically important now, not only for the city budget, and frankly, maybe that's a secondary issue, but for people's household budgets. You know, people are worried about being able to keep the roofs over their heads, food on their table, keep their jobs. Some people are out of work. I've heard from a lot of folks who have grown children that are living at home with their parents again. And we need to make sure people have good opportunities for employment in the region, bring our unemployment levels down, and that will ultimately translate as our economy gets better into more tax revenue for our city, and we will have to cut less and hopefully not much at all. So those are some of my priorities. You've heard about homelessness and road repair and some other things, and I look forward to talking about it tonight.
Appreciate that. These are a lot of the topics that are interest to our membership, and we appreciate your willingness to be on here tonight to address them. I think we'll start, very generally so far, and if you talk a little bit about what you think San Diego's biggest challenges for the next years, and in particular, what is that critical issue impacting District 5, and how do you plan to address that?
I think one of the biggest issues right now, as I was mentioning, is the economy. but it's not only because of COVID. It was tough to do business in this city already before COVID hit. Fortunately, in some ways with COVID, some of our leaders have recognized how tough it is to do business in the city and said we need to make it easier. And obviously you see some of those things, at least on a temporary basis, like dining outside, easing the permit requirements and things so people can actually expand their businesses in ways that are really necessary right now because of the COVID restrictions. But when we sort of get past the period of time where COVID drives all of our decision making, it doesn't mean the city is an easy place to do business, and we need to really make the city more user friendly. And there are lots of areas around us that are much more business friendly than the city of San Diego. The city of Chula Vista, for example, has some good programs and processes that I think we should be looking at as the city of San Diego to make it easier for businesses. One thing I do want to do with this COVID period right now is I want to waive all business licensing and permitting fees. Make it easier for the businesses, small businesses to start and thrive. And 98% of our businesses in San Diego are small businesses. And District 5 has a lot of those, a lot of business owners. So that's a big priority of mine, is really trying to make the city a more user-friendly place for businesses and for people to work.
These times are really tough on small businesses right now, but at some juncture we will emerge from the coronavirus pandemic, and our small businesses in particular are going to be still struggling. What specifically can you do as a council member, will you do as a council member, to help those businesses thrive and remain in business once this pandemic has been resolved?
One of the things I keep talking about is having San Diego get more than its fair share of tourism dollars back. And, I think we're in a unique position where with our weather, we can really promote San Diego as one of the safest cities to come visit. And people are dying to visit, dying to actually take trips and go places, whether they're up in LA, Orange County, Arizona, or even further away and they're willing to fly. We can take advantage of things like I mentioned, our weather and our outdoor space. I've talked to folks at the airport about maybe having an outdoor baggage claim, for example, so people can keep that social distance and not be as concerned about traveling through an airport. I've talked to the port about other ways. Once cruise ships start cruising again, I want to see pretty much every cruise ship that's on the west coast of North America stop in San Diego. And the benefit of that is a ripple effect. I talked to a hotel owner yesterday, actually, and he was telling me, as the hotels and restaurants get booked and filled closer to downtown and the gas lamp and other places there, that means more and more hotels and restaurants get filled up and booked as we go north in the region. And so, getting, like I said, more than our fair share of tourism dollars is absolutely something the city council should be actively involved in trying to accomplish, obviously working with the tourism authority and others, but the city council needs to really adopt policies that promote that so we get a thriving economy here more quickly.
You touched on something that's really critical to the city of San Diego right now, and that is the budget shortfall caused by the decline in that transient occupancy tax revenue from tourism. We anticipate that'll probably come back at some time, but in the meantime, what are you going to do if you get elected to the city council to help bridge the gap with the budget and keep providing the services that San Diegans depend on?
That's a great question. It's going to be a tough budget year no matter what. And, to be frank, I think that we are inefficient as a city. One of the proposals I had was actually to have city council members cut their own political budgets. And I'm using the word cut. It's actually not even really a cut. It's holding the budgets to the same level of spending as the prior year, which again in government is a cut. But in my view, if we've been able to deliver effective constituent services on a certain amount of money spent, we should look to at least hold at that same level. We need to look for more opportunities like that. I mean, that alone is about a $2.5 million savings, but we need to look at other opportunities for where is our city inefficient and ineffective in spending our tax dollars. And I think we need to look at things like, look at creative ways to do things in terms of our libraries, for example. How can we try and maintain the same level of access for people in our library system, but perhaps not have the same level of staffing, things like that. But again, it's going to require a lot of tough conversations. I don't like the across the board cut mentality that doesn't make the tough decisions about what are priorities for our city and for our region. We have to make those tough decisions and decide what are our priorities. For me, it's always, in terms of local government, public safety and infrastructure. You know, we need to make sure we're staying on top of our infrastructure needs. It's not fun, you know, but those are critically important. And public safety, fire, and police are critically important for local government. You know, second to those things, we need to obviously make sure we're keeping our libraries, parks, and recreation centers open as much as possible. But it does mean we're going to have to make some cuts elsewhere. And like I said, really think creatively about how we deliver some of our city services.
You hit on a good segue, and that's the issue of transportation and infrastructure, obviously a hot button issue for San Diego and District 5 in particular. You know, what are your plans? What are the needs when it comes to transportation in the region, and particularly in District 5?
So let me start by saying I lived in DC for a while. I went to law school there, worked there a bit. And I love the fact that I could live there and I didn't have a car for part of that time because the mass transit in DC worked great. And that is an area where it does work well. Southern California is not an area where mass transit works particularly well. And in District 5, even more so. In District 5, we don't have viable mass transit options. We're just too spread out. Buses are probably the best we're going to have. And the nice thing about buses is you can change routes based on demand. And so from my standpoint, we really need to continue to invest in our roads, especially if you're concerned about the environment. One of the worst things we can have is cars sitting in traffic. You want cars to be moving. So I do support, you know, some, from a regional standpoint, some additional investment in transit. For example, I think the trolley should go to the airport. It goes so close and doesn't quite get there. I think particularly for tourism, that's a good thing to try and invest in. But for District 5, my biggest priority, and certainly where I disagree with my opponent, is to make sure we're investing in our roads and our road infrastructure.
When it comes to your opponent, and unfortunately she wasn't able to join us this evening, but maybe you can provide a little context in some of those areas that differentiates you from Marnie's campaign. Why should District 5 residents vote for you over Marnie?
Sure, no, absolutely. You know, there are a number of reasons, I think, and I actually have a tremendous amount of respect for my opponent. This is a great opportunity for voters to pick between two very, in my view, qualified candidates, but who have different experiences and who have different priorities. As I mentioned at the outset, I'm raising with my wife our kids here. We chose San Diego to be where we want to live and raise a family and work. It's where I started my business 8 years ago. Marnie decided to move back about 2 years ago just to run for office. This is not where she's been investing her time. She's done a lot of great service in her life, but it's been in other areas, and she's chosen to move back to run for office. And I think that matters, frankly. That's a big difference in terms of our backgrounds. We're both committed to service, but I've been committed to service here in San Diego. I think in terms of our priorities, again, one of the big ones is infrastructure dollars and tax dollars. Like I said, my big priority is to make sure we have roads where people can drive and move their cars, not stuck in traffic. And she has talked a lot about investing more in transit, including things like rail, which again, I think doesn't anticipate new technologies that are going to come down the road. I think also, frankly, I'm somebody who is a very strong supporter of our law enforcement. I'm proud to have the endorsement of retired police chief Shelley Zimmerman, Sheriff Bill Gore. And, I think that my commitment to law enforcement and public safety, particularly in this climate right now, is a difference between me and my opponent. So again, I think, there's a lot of information out there, some of which is true, some of which isn't, about me and my opponent. But certainly, I think if you do some research, you'll see. And again, I don't want to misrepresent my opponent in any way, and she isn't here. But I do think there are some real differences in terms of our backgrounds and our priorities going forward.
Thank you. One of the primary statewide debates that is critically important to a lot of the chamber members right now is the issue of Prop 15, and a number of questions on where do you stand on Prop 15 and why?
Great question. I oppose Prop 15. It's interesting. Again, one of the differences, I'm a business owner. and my opponent has never owned a business. And so one of the things I've dealt with is a triple net lease. As a small business owner, having a triple net lease, a lot of people don't realize if Prop 15 passes that small businesses in particular are going to have to pay those property tax increases. It's not just these big bad landlords, and I use that kind of in quotes, big bad landlords that are paying the property taxes. It's going to be a lot of small businesses. I also think that it's a slippery slope. I think it's the first step in repealing Prop 13 for residential homes. I think California is such a unique market. That's why Prop 13 passed originally, because it is a tough market where people, seniors in particular, could get forced out of their homes based on their property tax bills. And so that's one reason. I just think it's not good to raise taxes, particularly now when so many businesses are struggling. But two, I'm generally someone who doesn't believe in increasing taxes when the government is having a hard time funding priorities. To me, we need to elect people that understand money doesn't grow on trees. Money comes out of people's pockets. It means somebody doesn't have more money to go out to dinner with their family, or put their kids through college, or do an improvement on their home. That's where tax dollars come from. And so it's important that government leaders take a look at how your money is being spent and try and make sure that it's being spent well and wisely, as opposed to just going back to the taxpayers every time and saying, we need more money for something that we told you before we were going to do well, and we're not doing. So I'm pretty adamantly opposed to Prop 15, and frankly other tax increases, which again is another difference between me and my opponent.
I want to make sure to give the audience some opportunity to ask their questions. If you have any questions, please type them into the Q&A function or in chat, and we'll make sure the candidate has that in front of them. Excuse me, it looks like a question now. One of the questions from the audience: SDMAC published their annual military economic impact study today. 25% of our GRP derives from the military and defense industry. Please describe your thoughts on the impact of the defense industry in San Diego and District 5. What steps will you take to improve the defense business environment? That's from Rob Benoyer with BAE Systems.
So I'm a strong supporter of the military economy in San Diego. San Diego, to me, is a military and a veteran town. We have some of the highest populations in the country of not only active duty military, but veterans as well. I actually have a veteran advisory committee for my campaign that I certainly expect to continue going forward, because I never served, so I don't have that firsthand experience and knowledge. But it is such a tremendous economic impact in our region. I actually did go to the event last year, this month last year. I missed the one today that was by Zoom. But I have read the economic impact report from last year, and it is critical. And frankly, I have some ideas. I think the city needs to actually formalize the military advisory committee. The county has one. I think the city should have one, because again, it is such a big part of our local economy, and it's also a big part of our workforce. And I think our city council members, we have no city council members right now who have served in the military. So I think we need to formalize that input more. I think we need to track it more, track where our city dollars are going, our government contracts, in terms of how many veteran-owned businesses are getting them and things like that. But to me, it can't be overstated how important the military economic impact is to San Diego as an entire region, not just the city and not just District 5.
Yeah. So the other issue we would be remiss in not addressing is certainly the issue of housing, and it's something prior to the pandemic was really front and forward. We've been in a housing crisis for several years. What do you propose to do to resolve that issue, or create new housing or new homebuyer opportunities? So
a number of things. First, I'll say I completely agree. When talking to business owners, that's one of the top challenges they talk about, is that they can't keep a consistent workforce because people are commuting from far away because they can't afford to live here. So they're commuting from Temecula, Murrieta, and as soon as they get a job that pays the same or close, they'll take it because it means they don't have to do that commute anymore. So housing is a real issue. And hopefully a lot of people watching are familiar with the Point Loma study from several years ago that said about 40% of the price of a home is based on government regulation and delay. And so I think we need to look at that in particular. Just an example, we have a new in lieu fee policy in the city of San Diego. When that kind of goes to its maximum level in about 5 years, a 1,200 square foot home is going to have an additional $30,000 to the price tag just for that in lieu fee. It's those sorts of things that just get passed on directly to the consumer because we have so many government policies that may be well intended, but ultimately are driving up the cost to the consumer. So we need to, in my view, start looking at not imposing more of those costs that get passed on to the consumer. But then we also need to make sure our community plans are regularly updated so we get the community input at the outset and then more development can be done by right. We also need to make sure timelines with development services are more predictable, fees are more predictable. Again, I mentioned Chula Vista earlier. Chula Vista is a great example. They actually publish the timeline that it takes to get different permits. And that helps hold the city employees accountable and the management accountable for getting things done quickly. If people see the time to completion is going up instead of going down, that's a problem. And the elected leaders are going to hear that from constituents, and more is going to need to be done to make sure those timelines are narrowed down. So there's a lot that can be done. I have this idea for CEQA reform that's actually local in our court system. Doesn't even require Sacramento to agree, doesn't even require the city council to agree. It just means our local judges would fast track CEQA cases. So I've thought a lot about this, and there's a lot that could be done to really try and help the process go more smoothly, quickly, and in a predictable way.
So this is kind of a parallel question, but we hear a lot from our members about their involvement with the Development Services Department of the City of San Diego, and it seems like in their experience in dealing with DSTs of other cities that process can oftentimes be more streamlined elsewhere, and there are really opportunities for making it better here. With the housing crisis, with the need for business recovery, what can we do to improve these departmental processes and make them more streamlined and business friendly?
So again, I just mentioned a few of those with development services, but I think a lot of, and some of this is empowering the people in development services. I mean, I've heard story after story of people that go to development services and they've got some, conflicting regulations that the employees are trying to reconcile, and they say, well, I'm not authorized to make a determination. I've got to kick it up to a manager, and that could add a 4-week delay to get an answer on something. So some of this is empowering people to use some common sense and move things forward, but it also is about leadership. This has been something that has been talked about in the city development services for over a decade at least. And it's because I think we haven't had people in elected office that are actually willing to spend the time with development services, with the management of development services, with the people on the front line interacting with the community, understanding the challenges, earning some trust from people that work in the city bureaucracy, and coming up with real concrete solutions to how to make things work better in development services. And I think that's what's really necessary. I'm not going to promise that day one I'm going to have an answer for how to make development services more effective, but I think it really takes having elected leaders spend that time with the management of development services and the line folks to come up with how can we do this better and get buy-in from everybody.
Last question I'll ask is depending how the election shapes out, you could have a more, or I should say a less broad focus on the city council. How are you willing to work with different opinions and personalities on the city council depending on how the election shakes out?
That was a very diplomatic way to put that, less broad. So what I love about local government is it is nonpartisan. Unfortunately, local government, local elections have become partisan. But I have zero interest in being in Sacramento, DC. I like local government because you're talking about potholes, building housing, things that are not partisan issues. And why I went down this road is because of, as I said, my service to the community. One of the things I'm most proud of is chairing a committee that helped select 4 of our federal magistrate judges. It helped in that process. And I chaired a committee of people very accomplished, including judges, attorneys, community members, that have very strong opinions. And I was able to lead that group into consensus recommendations on something as important as federal magistrate judges. And that's the type of leader I am. I look forward to working with council members of different backgrounds, different perspectives. And I will absolutely be on the losing end of the number of votes for sure. But it doesn't mean I'm going to demonize my colleagues that I don't agree with. It means I'm going to look for the next opportunity to work with them and find areas of common ground. And if you listen to the narrative, there's a lot that we all agree on. We all agree we have a housing challenge. We all agree we need to do more when it comes to homelessness. There's so many opportunities to work together and get things done. And again, I'm not somebody who cares who gets the credit. So I look forward to working with the entire council when I get elected.
Thank you. And with that, we just have a couple minutes left. So I want to provide you an opportunity to provide some closing remarks. And thank you very much for your participation tonight.
Well, I appreciate that. And again, appreciate the Chamber for hosting this. As I mentioned, I am a business owner. 8 years ago, I started my own business as a lawyer, started my own law firm, and had the fear of deciding when I got a corporate office space, can I afford the office space with 2 full windows, or should I have, the 1.5 that has the pillar in front of it? Because my 3 kids were aged 4 and under, and my wife didn't work. And so I know that fear of starting a business. And I know that fear, frankly, when COVID hit and my income went down over 50% overnight because I'm a business owner. Those are experiences that are important experiences, I think. Doesn't mean everybody on the city council should be a business owner. It's important to have different experiences. But I think it is important to have people on city council that have that business experience, have the responsibility, frankly, for making sure other people are fed in the organization before your own family is fed, and understand the challenge of that and the importance of that, and the importance of balancing budgets and signing, not only the back of a check, but the front of a check. And that's experience that I'm bringing to the table, along with, like I said, all of my experience as a community leader, working with people of different backgrounds and really moving the ball forward. So I appreciate everyone taking the time. If anybody has any questions that didn't get answered tonight, they can go to my website. It's joeforsandiego.com. The contact form on there goes directly to my email. So if you have questions, like I said, that you didn't get answered, I'd be happy to call you, answer them by email, or however it's most convenient for you. But I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time, Joe. And we appreciate it. We knew this went really quickly, and there's lots we can cover. So I encourage all of our members to please reach out to Joe directly and ask any questions that we didn't get an opportunity to discuss tonight. So thank you again, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.